rebuttal, and you do have 15 minutes.
All right. Dr. Cone tends to romanticize the Afro-Cubans and the Europeans who were there in Cuba. Let me give you a little background in terms of what was going on during the early 1900s. They give context here. In 1912, Black war veterans formed the Afro-Cuban Party to demand reparations. In response, the government slaughtered 3,000 Black veterans and imprisoned 1,000 more than Black citizens. With the help of the United States and the Catholic Church and the support from the Black bourgeoisie, the government raided Afro-Cuban temples and burned sacred drums. White Cubans formed militias. Bands of whites attacked Blacks on the street of Havana. Constitutional guarantees were suspended. Suspected rebels were arrested and killed. The need to defend white civilized Cuba from Black witchcraft and savagery was extolled. The government forced machine gun 150 peaceful protests, including entire families. The presence of the U.S. Marines offshore allowed the Cuban army to discriminate and kill 3,000 to 6,000 Blacks. Caparas, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, noisy street parades by Black Cubans during the carnival period were prohibited. Despite the violence and racism and contempt directed toward Afro-Cubans, music and dance traditions continued to be practiced in parts of the Black community situated in slum tenements outside the core city. This is the context in which the Black Cubans lived and were treated. And for a long time, the white Cubans didn't want the Black Cubans' music, despised it. Now they want to embrace it as if it's their own. Now let me get something straight in reference to what are Afro-Cubans? Afro-Cubans is simple. They are Africans who live in Cuba, just like enslaved Africans who live in America are Africans. They're Africans. At the end of the day, whether the conga drum was created through the materials, it was modeled after the djembe drum and other drums. You use what you have. It's still an African instrument, no matter where it was comprised or built. So to add this Cuban identity to it doesn't take away from the fact that it is in fact an African instrument. At the end of the day, there is no difference between an Afro-Cuban rhythm, an Afro-Caribbean rhythm, an Afro-Latin rhythm. Guess what? They're all African rhythms. We're playing semantics when we talk about what is African, what is Caribbean, what is Cuban. So let me, Dr. Cone, when you get a chance, I want you to send me what this gentleman, Arthur Paul Orthovich, whatever his name is. He was reading some things and you didn't really cite where you got it from. You just mentioned his name. As I provided articles and actually web pages where you could go look up this information, I need that from you as well. Now, you talk about Bongo Rock wasn't an anthem. Now, Hurt played Bongo Rock. He talked about that in the video. So Bongo Rock was in fact an anthem. Now, I'm going to go through this list. Let me see. Now, you want to suggest that Dizzy and Preston Epps are the spokespersons for all the African Americans. Just because Epps did not hear of conga drums or bongos, he doesn't speak for every African American. Neither does Dizzy. I mean, are you going to deny what I read about what happened in Pinxter, where there are African celebrations in the 19th century and all through the centuries of the 18th and 17th century of the South? Are you going to deny that history? So just because Preston Epps never heard of it doesn't mean it didn't exist. It doesn't mean that any other African American didn't hear of him. It astounds me that you would rely on what Preston Epps would say. At the end of the day, the thing that's most important and what stands out is that Preston Epps said he was influenced by Africans, not any Cubans, not any Puerto Ricans. It was Africans. And actually, Preston Epps was introduced to these drums in the 40s, not the 50s, when you want to talk about when Preston Epps was actually introduced to them. Now, Dr. Cone, I really want you to give me the actual documentation where you talked about this back and forth of jazz musicians going to the Palladium and all that. I truly believe you made it up because there's no such thing, in my opinion. So you could prove me wrong by providing me the documentation that points out that this so-called back and forth of jazz musicians going to the Palladium and back and forth, I truly believe you're making it up like you always do. Most of the things that you said, respectfully, I say that. Now, let me go to the New Orleans jazz scene and how you believe is so much influenced with Caribbean culture. What we're talking about when we talk about the Spanish tinge, what all we're talking about is a way of applying rhythm to a particular song. It's nothing related to Latin cultures, nothing related to Spanish or French or Portuguese or any of these cultures. Is a polyrhythm, a way of playing a song. These rhythms were introduced by Africans, no Europeans. So let's not get caught up in semantics in terms of the Spanish church. Oh, that must be Spanish people. No, it does not. Now, you also are still, I don't want to use this word, but you're still lying about the definition of the word discographer. Can you provide me a definition that's researchable that says it's about to go off, to get free, pertaining to only the conga, pertaining to the bongos, pertaining to the clave? Can you provide an actual definition other than your word? Because I contend it does not exist. You're constantly making up stuff to fit a particular agenda. So I challenge you again. Provide a definition that is not your own, that people can research. Just say, go to this website, you'll see this definition. All right? Now, you refer to Felipe Luciano, and he's talking about these Latin rhythms played by the last poets. First of all, Felipe is not an original member. I'm talking about when it was first formed, and I'm talking about where the inspiration comes from. It's Africa. It's not Latin America. So let's stop playing games with this kind of stuff. You know, let me see what else I wrote here. Man. Let me see. The feeling versus discarded. Now, check it out. The feeling movement gave birth to the discography. If you look at the information, I outlined it in what I presented. You are making up your own definitions, saying they had nothing to do, these musicians had nothing to do with the creation of the discography. It doesn't have anything to do with the creation of the discography by the way you are defining the discography. Discography, again, for those who don't know, is the Latin version or the Spanish version of a jazz improvisational jam session. That is the meaning. Cologne wants to present this alternative meaning that is not based in any fact. So when you say these American musicians that came to Cuba had nothing to do with this, yes, in the way that he defines it, absolutely. But if you define it in the correct way, then they did. And this is the shell game Cologne is engaged in. It's amazing. Let me see what else here. Let me see what else I can talk about. Let me see. I know I got still got. Okay, he wants to understand what does the FBA stand for, and I'm going to speak for me. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. As a foundational Black American, I believe personally that I am a descendant of Africans. I'm not denying my African ancestry. I know there's some that will deny it, but I'm speaking for me. And basically, an FBA is simple. If I have ancestors that date back to the enslavement of my people, then I'm a foundational Black American. That's what it means. It's not complicated. So you could be an FBA and embrace African identity. No one is playing games or trying to hide as to who I am and who I represent. Now let's get back with James Brown. You are in fact Latinizing James Brown, and you're trying to use the Fania All-Stars. And let me make a correction. If I said that Johnny Briggs didn't play on the Give It Up, Turn It Loose, I must have misspoke. I said he didn't play congas on the album he did for Ismael Miranda in the Orchestra Harlem. That's what I meant to say. If I misspoke, I misspoke. But John Briggs did in fact play on the Give It Up, Turn It Loose. He did play congas. Again, it had nothing to do with Latin culture. It was all about Africa. And there's no question about it in my mind, and I don't think you could provide anything to argue against that. Now, as far as the Fania All-Stars, he said, oh, James Brown was influenced by the Fania All-Stars. Let me say this. The only time James Brown and the Fania All-Stars was in the same room together was in 1974 in Zaire, Africa, at the Rumble in the Jungle, the fight between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. There was a big concert, and James Brown was the headliner. The Fania All-Stars were there. Is it possible they jammed out in 1974? It's possible. But there is no record of them ever playing together outside of that particular space. John Briggs does not appear on any member list. He doesn't appear on any concert appearance. No association with the Fania All-Stars altogether. Like I said, if we look at the song "Give It Up, Turn It Loose," that's 1970, right? We're talking 74. So if there was a influence, that influence had to be before 1970. And Dr. Colon cannot present that. He didn't cite it in this particular presentation, but he got this idea also by a news article printed in the North Star Ledger, where Johnny Briggs was living in a nursing home, and they were talking about his life, and apparently he must have said that he played with these people. So this is where Dr. Colon gets this idea that John Briggs played with the Fania All-Stars, and therefore this influence naturally found its way into James Brown's music. Now, Dr. Colon is under this impression whenever you hear a conga drum, it has to be a Latin song, or not a Latin song, but a Latin influence. It's totally ridiculous. He would have to ignore all of the African, the Pan-Africanism movement that was going on in the late 60s and early 70s. He would have to ignore that history in order to make that claim. And I don't think, as a historian, I don't think he should do that. But, you know, we'll never know. Let me see. I'm going to try to go through my notes real quick, because I wrote a lot down because there was a lot that he said. Let me see. Synapse, Dizzy Gillespie. Let's see. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I don't want to miss anything here. Oh, well, let me just say this, too. There is no such thing as a Latin breakdown. 5 months ago, if you looked that word up if you Googled it, you wouldn't find that word anywhere, that term anywhere. This is something that Dr. Colon and his buddy came up with to, again, Latinize African-American culture, to continue to crowbar their way into our culture. That's all that is. There's nothing Latin about what you hear in these not Latin breakdown, but into these b-boy anthems. These are African Americans. Listen, he still hasn't made the connection to these specific African American percussionists, that they were influenced by what was going on in the Mambo period, or any influence through Dizzy Gillespie or Chano Pozo. Again, these guys live outside the metropolitan area of New York. We're talking Chicago, Detroit, DC, Philly, places like that, that were unaware of what was going on in New York. The only way people knew about what was going on in New York, you had to have radio. You had to listen to the radio. They wasn't hearing none of that. So where did the influence come from? If you look at what was going on in the Black Power movement, again, I have to stress this. This is so important. And he says it's not connected to the b-boy anthems. It's connected to the influence. If you can't see that, and we talk about a nexus. A nexus means a connection. It has to be a logical connection. You know what I'm saying? It has to be logical. And so if you can't say that something that was done in the 50s was hanging in the air for like 20 years and then it dropped in the subconscious of African-American percussionists in the 70s and say, oh, that's the connection, when we really know what was going on during that period. Black Power movement, Pan-Africanism, all of that was going on. You can't ignore that. That was the influence. To suggest that it has something to do with Latin culture is totally ridiculous. And so I stand by what I said. Dr. Colon, you got to stop reading your own words and present the documentation, cite the sources, so we get this information right. I challenge you to do that. I'm done.
Thank you for your passionate counter-rebuttal, True Savior. We now enter the question and answer exchange. Truth Savior, you have 15 minutes to direct your questions directly to Dr. Derek Colon.
Oh, can you, right now, show me a definition of the word Descarga that defines it the way you do? Hello?
Yeah, hold on. Let me put on my headphones, buddy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Truth?
I can hear you.
All right. Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you, at this moment, because you were reading some things, so at this moment, can you present me with a definition of the descarga that said is the go off, is the Latin percussions, is the get loose and all of that? Can you provide a definition that says that? Independent of you.
Yeah, none of it was dependent of me.
No.
The Latin descarga. None of it was dependent of me.
No. I want you to provide me with a definition that I can look up. I want to be able to go on my pad right here. I want to go on my pad and look up that definition of the descarga that defines it the way you do.
Well, the way that I define it,
yes,
is
I want to
what it says.
look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Let me find it. Okay, so the only place that we see.
Just read it for me. Tell me the website that you got it from, and just read it for me.
But that's what I'm looking for right now. I don't want to use Wikipedia.
No,
because that's what most people use.
Right. I don't want you to use Wikipedia. Use the definition. Use the website that you got your definition from. That's the one I want.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
You didn't prepare me for this, so I'm.
Oh no! You got to be prepared, buddy.
No, these are fresh questions.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
If you're solid, it's no problem, right?
Well, it is no problem.
There you go. That's what I want to hear.
Okay, so here we go. This is from Last FM, and again, Descarga Music from Last FM. Descarga literally. So you're looking up Last FM?
What is it called? What is it?
It's called Last FM.
Last FM.
Yep.
That's one word. Last FM. LAST.
Yeah. LAST.FM. Yeah.
.fm.
Right.
Hold up. Oh shoot! Let me go back. You can read it as I look for it. Is it any / or just what? What am I looking for?
It's LAST.FM.
That's it?
LAST.FM, yeah.
All right, okay.
So I'll read it.
No, it's not coming up anything. You sure it's not a / something?
No.
It can't be. I put in LAST.FM and it's coming up nothing.
Yeah, I have it in front of me. I mean, I could show it to you. It's right here.
I tell you what. No.
Look at the screen. Look at the screen. It's right there. It's Last FM. Descarga Music.
Oh, Descarga Music. Hold up. Before you read it. Was it like a bunch of videos?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the definition. So they use some of the definition from Wiki, but Descarga literally, again, I said this, a discharge in Spanish. Okay,
yes.
It's an an improvised jam session consisting of variations of Cuban music themes. Primarily, we read all this before. It's strongly influenced by jazz. It was developed in Havana. Important figures. This is where it is. Important figures in the emergence of the genre were Cachao, Julio Gutierrez, Bebo Valdez, Peruchín, Nino Rivera in Cuba, Tito Puente, Machito, Mario Bauza. Originally, the Descargas were promoted by record companies such as, and it gives the names, from the 1960s, the Descarga format was usually adopted by large salsa ensembles, okay? And this would be known as salsa dura. So my point is, if you look at these people that were mentioned, okay, you ask any musician, any musician will tell you. I need to be able to see him. I can't see him, Pro. You got the timer up. I can't see him. All right, there we go. So any musician, any Latin percussionist will tell you it means a go-off. It means a discharge. It means to let loose. Silos Congas is in the chat right now. He is a Latin percussionist. You're saying no because you don't know this. That's all it is.
I asked you a simple question. You're ad-libbing. You're ad-libbing right now. I asked you a simple question. What was the question I asked you? So you're clear what I asked you. What was the question you thought I asked you?
The definition. I just read the definition.
Read the definition only. Don't editorialize. Do not editorialize. Don't editorialize. Just answer. No. Define it. Just define it. Do not editorialize.
It means to go.
No. What does it say?
I just read it to you.
Read it again, Charlie. Read it for me again. Okay, read it again.
I just read it. A discharge.
Again, please. I want to hear it again.
Yeah, okay. It's an improvised jam session consisting of variations on Cuban music themes. What else? I need to be able to see him, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just read it.
That's the definition.
Right.
That's it.
Tell me what I'm saying. That's wrong. That doesn't go with that definition. Tell me.
You said it pertains to the percussive sounds only. Do you want me to play it? Do you want me to play it? Do you want me to play it? Do you want me to play it with audio? I can do that if you want me to.
No, I know what I said.
Okay.
I have it right here.
Because I tell you, let me get it ready, just in case you deny what it says.
The descarga is the instruments congas.
No. It doesn't. It means every instrument. It means every instrument.
It does not. No, it does not.
Read it, Dr. Cologne.
It does not.
Come on now.
It does not.
Show me where it's just. That's what I asked you, Dr. Cologne. I asked you to show me the example that says that the congas and the percussive instruments only.
Wait. Truth.
That's what I asked you for.
Hold on. They're trying to get our attention. I don't know what they're asking. What's up?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to remind of the rules that there's no interruptions. It's a question and answer exchange. Mm-hmm. So if we can kind of set back just some of the time and scale it back just a bit. We're not having the closing arguments at all. We're having a question and answer exchange. So just try not to, go with the rules here. So thank you.
Okay. Got you. Thank you.
Dr. Cologne.
Okay. Go for it.
I just need you to find me a definition that says percussive instruments only. That's it. It's a simple request.
Yep.
It's a simple request.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
Yes, please. Answer that question, please.
The definition is when you look up what descarga looks like. When you look up what it looks like, what do you see? Congas, timbales, bongo. You see the Afro percussive. When you listen to a descarga, what do you hear? Those instruments. You don't hear anything else. It's those instruments. You don't hear nothing else. Look it up on YouTube. You will not hear anything else.
I tell you. Okay. I guarantee if I go on YouTube right now and put in descargas, you'll see ensembles playing. I guarantee it. Ensembles? But I'm not going to do it. Ensembles. People,
we could do it right
people
now.
Playing different instruments And they call it discography. Okay?
Let's do it. Let's do it right now. Let's do it right now.
Do it right now.
Oh, descarga. Here we go.
YouTube. YouTube.
Yeah. Here's the first one. Can you hear it?
What is the video, buddy?
I typed in descarga and picked the first one.
Okay, let me do the same thing. Hold up. You just put in discarga, right? Okay.
Yep. Pick the first video. It's got out.
Yeah, but what else was going on, Dr. Clone?
It's the Afro-percussive instruments.
What else was going on, though?
What do you mean?
Continue. Play it for just one. Play it for one whole minute.
Yeah, I'll play it.
Play it for one whole minute.
Yep. Can you hear it though?
I can hear it.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure.
Well, that sounds like a whole lot of percussive instruments.
It's a descarga.
Well, that's what I said. That's what it involves all instruments. It involves all the instruments.
It's a descarga, bro. It's an improvised jam.
You know what I'm going to do?
No point.
This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to let the audience decide who's right. I'm not going back and forth with you. It's cool. It's cool.
Okay.
It's cool.
What's your next question?
All right. Because I can see this is that. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you this question. Do you believe that President Epps and Dizzy Gillespie speaks for all African Americans?
Of course not.
So when you make a point to point out that President Epps never heard of congas or bongo drums, you said, oh, well, they didn't hear it. Nobody must have heard of it. Is that really what you're saying?
Well, let me quote what Preston Epps said.
I know what President Epps said.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm gonna read the exact, and I know you know what he said. I'm gonna read the exact quote. This is what Epps said. I didn't know nothing about bongos and congas because bongos and congas were not in America, England or France or the western part of the world. Listen to what he says. Nobody over here knew anything about bongos and congas. So I'm not putting words in his mouth. He said nobody knew.
Again,
is he exaggerating?
Again, I'm asking you, does he speak for everybody? Yes or no?
I don't know. I'm quoting what he said.
You actually believe you don't know if he speaks for everybody? That's what you're saying?
No, I don't believe he speaks for everybody, but I'm quoting what he said. He said nobody.
I know what he said.
How does he know that?
He doesn't know that. That's the point.
But you used him to prove your point.
No. Let me tell you how I used him.
I know how
Listen up very clear. The influence. I used him for the influence. Who was he influenced by? Because the whole thing was he influenced by Latin culture or was he influenced by African culture? I used him for that purpose.
Oh, okay.
That's why I used him. It was not to say to point out any other point other than that. You know, so
okay, got you.
All right, so let's move on
to
let me see. When we speak of the Spanish tinge, do you actually know what the Spanish tinge is?
It's the bending of the notes. So
it's not a bending of the notes. It's a rhythmic application to the notes.
Right, and it has a Spanish flavor to it.
Guess what that is? That's a polyrhythm. Those are African inspired, and they were developed by mulattoes and Cubans, mulattoes and African slaves in Cuba, who were the musicians at the time. They developed that style. Now, here's the importance when you talk about the question I'm going to ask you regarding this. Do you think there is a difference between the music, the jazz in New Orleans versus the music or the jazz outside the city of New Orleans?
Is there a difference between the jazz in New Orleans and the jazz outside of New Orleans?
Yes.
I would not be able to answer that because I don't follow jazz like that. I'm not a jazz connoisseur. So I wouldn't know that. When I listen to jazz in New Orleans, it sounds different than jazz other places. Yes. But again, I'm a novice with jazz.
It sounds different because it is different. The jazz that most people are aware of is the jazz that was made outside New Orleans. That was heavily influenced by the ragtime and the blues. This is what you hear is commonly when people think of jazz now versus when it was so-called created in New Orleans, is that effect. So when you point to this influence of Latin culture in jazz, it's really, again, a regionalized influence versus a global influence, because nowhere else is jazz played the way it is played in New Orleans. Would you agree?
Again, I'm not a jazz expert, so I wouldn't know.
I just want to kind of help you understand when you say jazz was influenced by Latin culture, it's a different kind of jazz. And as a musician, as a jazz musician, I know this. So when people tell me it was influenced by, we're talking about two different types of jazz. New Orleans jazz versus everything else. And that's why there's a difference. All right, I don't know if I'm running out of time. I can't see the clock.
Yeah, it's about 32 seconds.
Listen, I'm done, Dr. Clone. You want to ask me some questions?
Yeah, let me let her do it properly. And Andrina, he's done.
Okay. Insightful questions, Truth Savior. I just want to remind everyone in the chat, all of our viewers, get those questions ready. Again, you're going to have 2 minutes to get those questions ready. Dr. Colon, it's your turn to inquire. You have 15 minutes for your questions.
Awesome. All right. Let me know when I can begin. Okay, so in your presentation on the rebuttal, you talked about the rebels and the black Cubans and how how the white Cubans I want to know, what did that have to do with anything that I said?
Is to provide context to when now white Cubans embrace this music, when they antagonized it and they disdained it and they killed black people in Cuba for nothing based on the color of their skin. I want to provide context to who we're dealing with and the so-called white Latinos who are embracing this culture, hated it, and they want to take credit for something that they had nothing to do with. I want to provide context to that.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. This is really a hip hop conversation because we're talking about the connection with the B-boy anthems. You're strawmanning this whole thing. You're strawmanning this whole thing. But anyway, we'll keep going. So let me ask you a question, since this is the topic. You tout yourself as somebody who knows the culture of hip hop. You seem like you do your research, understood, got it. I see that you do that. What element of hip hop did you ever participate in?
Here we go. Now you want to change the topic, huh?
No, it's the same topic.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Go to your next question, sir. Go to your next question.
Oh, you're not going to answer?
The B-boy anthems. Let's deal with the B-boy anthems. Give me a question.
You're not going to answer the question I just
No, stay on topic, brother. Stay on topic. Go to your next one.
Okay. So the B-boy anthems have everything to do with hip hop.
Well, ask me a question on the B-boy anthems then.
What?
On the B-boy anthems.
Question.
Go ahead. Try again.
Okay, let's do this. You reneged on that one. When it says the genre in the definition, when it says that Descarga is highly influenced by jazz, where is the proof of this?
Where's the proof of it? the Descarga, if you listen to the actual Descarga, when you listen to these, for example, the videos that you asked me to look at right here, when you listen to them, you'll see that each musician takes opportunity to show off. The piano player, the guitar player, the kazoo player, whoever is there takes an opportunity to show off. That's the same idea that comes from jazz improv. And
now there was nobody doing that before jazz improv?
No, there
was nobody going off on musical instruments before jazz improv.
You're saying going off? I'm talking about jazz improv. I'm talking about improv.
They weren't doing that in Africa?
No, they were not. They were not.
No?
They were not. Prove it to me, brother. Prove it to me.
No,
that they were doing that.
I'm asking you to prove. You didn't prove anything.
Listen. The people tell you. Kachow will tell you where it comes from.
Show me a picture.
Kachow will tell you where it comes from.
I'm not talking about.
Let me read this. Hold up.
Listen to what I'm talking about.
Let me read it. I'll read it. Hold up. Give me a second. Let me find this real quick. Give me a second, because I gotta go back in my notes here. From the Latin Jazz Network. All right? The album, not the album, but the title is Kachow's Cuban Jam Session in Miniature, Descargas. Where do you think the word jam comes from?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Where does that come from?
Tell me.
No, you tell me. I'm asking you.
I don't know. You got
African American vernacular. African American vernacular. Okay. So why are Cubans using African American vernacular? Why?
Okay. They're speaking Spanish, and it's
so jam is a Spanish word.
Jam. No,
Spanish
descarga is a Spanish word.
Is jam a Spanish word?
No, descarga is.
Why are they using the word jam?
Who said they were? That's a definition that's given.
I got the article right here. What are you talking about?
A Cuban gave you that definition?
Listen, do you want me to send? I'll email you the article.
No, bro.
I'll email you the article.
Did a Cuban give you that definition? Who gave you that definition?
It comes from the Latin. Listen, I'm telling you where it comes from.
Who wrote that?
I'll send you the article,
bro. Come on, man.
I'll send you the article.
Come on.
I'll send you the article. I'll send you the article in email, okay, Dr. Clone? It's from the Latin Jazz Network.
Okay.
.com. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
So if you could tell me again, this jam, it comes from. Where does jam come from?
You said it comes from Black Americans.
Of course it does.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Next question. You have said the FBA co-created salsa.
You're going off
topic. Can you elaborate?
You're going off topic.
You've been off topic.
You're going off topic. Well, you should address me when I address me at the moment. I'm not allowing you to go off topic. You allow me to go off topic.
You brought this up in your presentation.
No, my brother.
You brought this up in your presentation.
Ask me another question that deals with the Latin breakdown.
You're running.
Ask me a question that deals with the Latin breakdown.
You're running.
I'm running hard, buddy. I'm running hard. Woo! Ask me a question about the Latin breakdown.
Bro, this is a question and answer period. I can ask you any question that I choose to.
No, you cannot.
You're running from the question.
I'm not running from anything.
Every question you asked me had nothing to do with the topic.
Stay on topic.
Every question you asked me had nothing to do with the topic.
Stay on topic.
Nothing.
Stay on topic.
I'm on topic.
Next question.
Are you not going to answer that question?
Nope. Next question.
Okay. No more question. No more question. Because you refuse to answer the question. All right, let's go.
Stay on topic.
Now we're good. You've been off topic, bro.
Stay on topic. Well, you should have addressed me at the moment. That's your fault. Let's go.
How can I address you when you're
Let's go.
So thank you for your thought-provoking questions, Dr. Derek Colon.
Cool.
All right, it's an exchanging question-answer session indeed. So let's proceed to the closing arguments. Audience, this is a great time, again, to finalize your questions for our speakers. So, Truth Savior, please begin with your 10-minute closing argument.
The purpose of my presentation was to establish that there is no such thing as a Latin breakdown, and the influence that Dr. Colon wants to suggest comes from Cuba is non-existent in Black American music. Just because an artist may have done a song with an Afro-Cuban flow doesn't define a genre. No one can look, for example, no one can look at a James Brown and say, oh, I wonder, was he a Latin artist or was he a funk artist? We know for a fact that he was a funk artist. Again, we have to also be aware of the fact that there is no such thing there's no difference between Afro-Cuban rhythms, Afro-Caribbean rhythms, Afro-Latin rhythms. They're all African. We can't get caught up in these semantics in terms of trying to make these things appear to be something that they're not. Again, we have to look at the fact that there was African drumming in America from as early as 1619 to 1740 when the band was initiated. However, there are episodes throughout this history, and I only touched on a few because of time's sake. I didn't want to go too much. Clearly, I have established without any question that African traditions were alive and well in the United States. The idea that we only received these African rhythms and these African sounds was because of Latinos doesn't bear out in the facts that I just laid out. Dr. Colon can never argue against or debunk anything I said in regards to what was happening in the New York area, New Jersey area under the celebration called Pinkster, where these people were speaking their native language, playing drums, doing all the things that were done in Africa well into the 19th century. Dr. Colon has failed to give me a satisfactory answer as to what is the true meaning of the discography. He has clearly tried to mislead us and try to make us think that the discography meant something that it actually doesn't mean. When I tried to get him to find a definition that fits his narrative, he failed to do it. And so that proves to me that he's only interested in presenting a false narrative that does not bear out in facts. I have proven also that the influence comes from America to Cuba. When we talk about since 1922, radio broadcasts were pumping in American music. You heard the voices of Angel Diaz and Cesar Perchula de la Luz talk about the influence of African-American music and the effect that it had on them. They were writing and jazz styles, modernized their music and all of that. It's unquestionable the effect that Black Americans have had on that culture, and to argue that the influence went the other way is totally ridiculous. Another thing I want to point out is this whole thing about Dizzy Gillespie and China Pozo. For some reason, Dr. Colon believes that Dizzy Gillespie can talk for all Black Americans. Just because Dizzy Gillespie was new to this whole thing of these congas or bongo drum doesn't mean that everyone else in Black America was not aware of it. He says the same thing about Preston Epps. I got him to acknowledge that Preston Epps doesn't speak for all of Black America. So it's important to understand you can't use one person's experience and try to say that that was every African American experience. Dr. Colon, in order for Dr. Colon to be correct, he has to disregard all the evidence that I've proven, especially the evidence regarding the Black Power movement, the Black Liberation movement, and Black Arts movement. Let me remind you, I showed a video in my promo video where I showed the celebrations of African Americans and other people of African descent in San Francisco and in Washington, D.C., signifying a national movement. This was a movement that was so powerful that it galvanized all of Black America to embrace African identity and culture. I showed you the examples of the dashiki drumming in the North American universities all through the nation. I showed you the learning of the Swahili languages, all these things, the creation of Kwanzaa. My mother practiced Kwanzaa. So I understand that how effective this movement was. It had a long-lasting impression on Black Americans. And the last poets, of course, Felipe Luciano, don't know, he's a newbie. When this group was formed, it was about Africa. Maybe Felipe introduced some Latin thing in it, but we're talking about its foundation. And this is what's important when we talk about the foundation of the B-boy anthems. When we look at who the Congo players were at the time, all African American. Where were the Latinos if they were so instrumental in this movement? Where were they? They were absent. They weren't around. We didn't need them. They were nowhere to be found. This was totally by African Americans who were inspired by the things that were going on in their community. We are, as Black people in this country, we are descendants of Africans. Who are you to say that as a bright Latino, telling me as a person of dark complexion, phenotypically more aligned with the people of Africa, who are you to tell me that I am not African, that I'm not entitled to these rhythms, I'm not entitled to these sounds, because they are my sound, they are part of who I am. And to suggest that somehow you are more privy to this culture than me is disrespectful, and I'm not having it. So let me see what else I want to say before I got a lot of time, but I pretty much, I don't even have to say much more, because at this moment, I think I covered everything quite succinctly. At the end of the day, in order for Dr. Cone to be right, he has to ignore the early U.S. history. He has to ignore everything that I say and act as if it never happened and act as if it never had an impact on Black people at all. It was no way, in fact, anything to do with Latin culture. This was our doing. We did this, and no one else had a hand into it. And lastly, before I say that, I got to remind you again, if you did not live in the metropolitan area of New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, there was no way you heard of these forms of music. Dr. Cone made up this whole thing about people coming, jazz musicians coming to the Palladium and trading ideas. Dr. Cone, I want you to show me, you could do it off camera at your leisure, show me the website or any article that points to that history. Because knowing you, I'm sure you made it up. Because I know of no such history. If there was such a history, I would have found it. The mere fact that the Palladium failed when they tried, or not the Palladium, but the Mambo failed trying to go nationally points to its insignificance in the national realm. So stop pushing this idea that this culture that you call the Mambo or the Latin breakdown culture was so influential when it clearly was not. And like I said, I have to say this finally again, there is no such thing as Latin breakdown. It's a figment of your imagination, and it's disrespectful to our culture to put forth some nonsense that can't be proven. And lastly, how dare you use another culture, Cuban culture, to uplift your people and try to make them foundational? What did the Puerto Ricans do? Tell me what the Puerto Ricans did. Where was their descalda? Show me that history. Don't use Cuban history. That's not your history. Guess what? Cubans aren't arguing this thing. Cubans is not in these YouTube spaces arguing this nonsense. You're using Cuban culture to try to crowbar your way into the culture. It's disrespectful. Think about it. The Cubans aren't doing it. Why are you doing it? It's okay to be in second place. It's okay to be participants. What's wrong with that? I'm done.
for your final thoughts, True Savior. Dr. Colon, please present your 10-minute final argument, your closing argument.
I am ready. So he started by saying that, did Preston Epps speak for all African Americans? Did Dizzy Gillespie speak for all African Americans? But then he played us a clip of these Cubans. He named two of them that talked about all of the African American jazz musicians that came to Cuba. I returned the question. Did they speak for all Cubans? Of course not. So you're running from not one time. You did not stick to the topic at hand at all. You gave some great straw man arguments to really show what's in your heart, bro. And your heart has a lot of racial issues that you choose to bring up. This had nothing to do with this debate. You made this about race. You made this about the black Cubans versus the white Cubans. You call them white Cubans. You made this about race. This was about the connection, the Latin breakdown.
Now, I'm sure, Dr. Colon, you're probably upset because I called you a liar again. All right? Now, listen, if you think I defamed you in reference to that Palladium Mambo article, all you got to do is show me that I was in error. But because I have the exact article, I think it's going to be hard to prove that I lied about you. So sometimes you got to, you got to take your bumps and your bruises. If you were somewhat out of pocket about something and you were called on it, it is what it is. Don't react, because I called you out. You got to be straightforward with the information. You're supposed to be about truth and honesty about the information. So again, if I got it wrong, I will apologize. But for some reason, I don't think I do. Now, let me address one thing about the feeling movement. Now, you try to say, well, why are you taking the words of two Cuban musicians to validate this movement? And that's because it was called a revolution. The feeling movement was called a revolution. That means more than two people had to create a revolution. So using those two individuals speaks for a lot of people. You don't have a movement with just two people. So let's not compare that to how you perceive what Preston Epps and how you perceive how, Dizzy Gillespie in their opinion. Because their opinion, they don't speak for everybody. All right? They don't speak for a movement. All right? So let's get that clear. Now, you think I hate. I have a heart full of hate. No, I don't hate nobody. But I am not going to let anybody disrespect my people or my culture. I'm just not having it. So when I feel that you are being disrespectful, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm far removed from that kumbaya stuff. I'll be 64 this year, right? I've seen a lot. I was for that kumbaya many years ago. But people don't respect black people for being nice. That's it. So I'm going to defend black culture through, like they said in the, when you take an oath to the Constitution, I'm going to defend black culture from enemies, foreign and domestic. That's what I'm going to do. So with that, peace.